Valerie slammed the door of her old pickup truck, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. The nerve of that snobbish HOA president, Jocelyn, belittling her modest mobile home in front of the entire neighborhood. As if Valerie didn't already feel self-conscious enough about her less-than-ideal living situation. Seething with anger, Valerie gunned the engine and peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching. She had to get away before she did something she'd regret. That woman had no right to make her feel small, just because Valerie couldn't afford a sprawling McMansion like the rest of the ridiculous homeowners association. As Valerie drove aimlessly, her mind raced. She replayed Jocelyn's condescending laughter and cruel words over and over, her blood boiling. No one talked to her that way and got away with it. Valerie made a sudden decision, jerking the steering wheel and executing a dangerous U-turn. She was going to show that stuck-up HOA president exactly what she was capable of. Valerie pulled up to the modest trailer park where she lived, scanning the rows of mobile homes until she spotted Jocelyn's immaculate two-story house looming at the end of the cul-de-sac. Without hesitation, she marched up to the front door and began pounding relentlessly. The door swung open, revealing a bewildered Jocelyn. What on earth? You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Valerie spat, not even bothering with pleasantries. Just because I live in a trailer, that makes me some kind of second-class citizen, is that it? Jocelyn blinked, clearly caught off guard by Valerie's sudden aggression. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Don't play dumb with me, Valerie shouted, taking a step forward and forcing Jocelyn to retreat into the house. I saw the way you laughed at me in front of everyone. Like I'm some kind of joke. I didn't mean anything by it, Jocelyn stammered, her eyes darting around nervously. I was just... Save it, Valerie interrupted, her voice dripping with contempt. I'm done being the butt of your little jokes. From now on, you're going to treat me with the respect I deserve. Jocelyn opened her mouth to respond, but Valerie cut her off again. And to make sure of that, I'm going to be your new neighbor. She turned on her heel and stalked back to her truck, leaving a bewildered Jocelyn standing in the doorway. The next day, Valerie was at the local real estate office, determinedly negotiating the purchase of the vacant lot adjacent to Jocelyn's house. The agent tried to dissuade her, citing the high price tag and the fact that the lot had been on the market for months with no takers. But Valerie was undeterred. I don't care what it costs, she said, slamming her hand on the desk for emphasis. I want that lot, and I want it now. The agent hesitated, sensing Valerie's unwavering determination. Well, I suppose we could make an offer. But I have to warn you, the current owners are asking a pretty steep price. Valerie nodded grimly. I'll pay whatever it takes. As she signed the paperwork, Valerie couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Jocelyn was about to get a rude awakening. No one laughed at Valerie and got away with it. Over the next few weeks, Valerie was a whirlwind of activity. She spent every waking hour overseeing the construction of her new mobile home, which she had custom ordered to be as large and imposing as possible. The workers marveled at her relentless drive, pushing them to work faster and more efficiently than they ever had before. Jocelyn, meanwhile, watched the proceedings with growing unease. She had been hoping the unsightly vacant lot would remain empty, a buffer between her pristine property and the less desirable parts of the neighborhood. But now, it seemed, that was not to be. As the foundation of the new mobile home was laid, Jocelyn began to pace anxiously. What kind of person would dare to move in next door, disrupting the carefully curated harmony of the community? She dreaded the thought of having to interact with her new neighbor, let alone welcome them into the exclusive HOA. When the mobile home was finally delivered and installed, Jocelyn's heart sank. It was a monstrosity, dwarfing her own house and casting an ominous shadow over her perfectly manicured lawn. She could already imagine the negative impact it would have on property values. Valerie, on the other hand, was positively giddy. She had spared no expense in creating the ultimate in mobile home luxury, complete with a wraparound porch, carport, and even a detached garage. It was a far cry from her previous humble abode, and she couldn't wait to see the look on Jocelyn's face when she laid eyes on it. As the moving trucks arrived and Valerie began unpacking her belongings, Jocelyn could no longer contain her curiosity. She marched over to the new property line, her high heels clicking on the pavement. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice dripping with disdain. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Jocelyn, the president of the Homeowners Association." Valerie looked up from the box she was carrying and flashed Jocelyn a sickly sweet smile. "Why, hello there, Jocelyn. I'm Valerie, your new neighbor." Jocelyn's eyes narrowed as she took in the ostentatious mobile home. "I see you've wasted no time in settling in." "Oh yes," Valerie replied, her tone dripping with false enthusiasm. "Isn't it lovely? I just couldn't resist the opportunity to become part of this wonderful community." Jocelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. "Well, I do hope you'll make an effort to, blend in." She cast a critical eye over Valerie's well-worn jeans and faded t-shirt. "We have certain standards here." Valerie's smile never wavered. "I'll be sure to keep that in mind." As Jocelyn turned and stalked back to her house, Valerie couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. She had landed right in the middle of Jocelyn's precious little kingdom, and there was nothing the HOA president could do about it. This was going to be fun. Over the next few weeks, Valerie made it her mission to be the most obnoxious neighbor Jocelyn had ever encountered. She blasted country music at all hours, letting it reverberate through the quiet cul-de-sac. She let her raggedy-looking dog roam the neighborhood, knowing full well it violated HOA regulations. And she purposefully neglected to maintain her lawn, letting the weeds grow unchecked. Jocelyn, meanwhile, was beside herself with frustration. She made countless calls to the HOA board, demanding that they take action against Valerie's flagrant disregard for the community's rules and standards. But the other members, while equally appalled by Valerie's behavior, were hesitant to directly confront her. She did pay a good price for that lot, one of the board members pointed out during a heated meeting. "And we can't exactly force her to move, can we?" Jocelyn's nostrils flared in anger. "Of course we can. This is a gated community with strict covenants. We have the authority to fine her or even have her removed if she continues to disrupt the peace and harmony of this neighborhood." The other board members exchanged uneasy glances. "I don't know, Jocelyn," another member said cautiously. "That could open us up to all sorts of legal trouble. And you know how litigious some of these trailer park residents can be." Jocelyn slammed her hand on the table, her composure slipping. "This is unacceptable. We cannot allow this hooligan to terrorize the rest of us just because she has a big enough bank account to buy her way in. Something must be done." The board members fidgeted uncomfortably, unwilling to challenge Jocelyn's forceful personality. Finally, one of them spoke up. "Well, perhaps we could try a more diplomatic approach. Why don't you go over there and try to reason with her?" Jocelyn let out a derisive snort. "Reason with her? That woman is impossible to reason with. She's nothing but a—" She caught herself just in time, remembering that the other board members were watching. Clearing her throat, she continued in a more measured tone. "Very well. I'll try to talk to her. But if that doesn't work, we'll have to consider more drastic measures." The next day, Jocelyn marched across the street, her shoulders squared and her head held high. She rapped sharply on Valerie's front door, steeling herself for the confrontation. After a moment, the door swung open, revealing Valerie standing there with a vaguely amused expression on her face. "Well, if it isn't the esteemed president of the HOA, to what do I owe this pleasure?" Jocelyn lifted her chin defiantly. "I'm here to discuss your flagrant disregard for the community's rules and standards." Valerie's smile widened. "Oh, really? And what exactly seems to be the problem?" Jocelyn's eyes narrowed. Don't play coy with me, Valerie. You know full well that your behavior is unacceptable. The constant noise, the unkempt lawn, the— Ah, ah, ah. Valerie interrupted, holding up a hand. I believe you'll find that I'm well within my rights as a homeowner in this community. After all, I did purchase this property fair and square, just like everyone else. Jocelyn's jaw tightened. Yes, well, be that as it may, I must insist that you— Insist all you want, dear, Valerie cut in, her tone dripping with condescension. But the fact is, I'm not going anywhere. So you'd best get used to having me as your neighbor. With that, she closed the door in Jocelyn's face, leaving the HOA president standing there, seething with rage. Jocelyn paced the floor of her living room, her mind racing. She had tried reasoning with Valerie, but the infuriating woman had completely stonewalled her. Now she was left with no choice but to escalate the situation. As the president of the Homeowners Association, Jocelyn had a certain degree of power and influence. She could fine Valerie for the violations, or even take legal action to have her evicted if the infractions were severe enough. But she knew that would only serve to further antagonize her new neighbor. No, Jocelyn needed a more subtle approach. Something that would get under Valerie's skin without directly challenging her. And then it hit her, the perfect plan. The next day, Jocelyn was at the local hardware store, carefully selecting her supplies. When she returned home, she got to work, meticulously measuring and cutting materials. It was a delicate operation, but Jocelyn was determined to see it through. As the days passed, Valerie couldn't help but notice the strange activity next door. Jocelyn was out in her yard constantly, working on some kind of project. Valerie tried to catch a glimpse, but the HOA president was always careful to keep the work hidden from view. Finally, after nearly a week of preparation, Jocelyn emerged from her backyard, a triumphant smile on her face. She stood back and admired her handiwork, a towering, opulent fence that stretched the entire length of her property, effectively blocking Valerie's view. Valerie watched in disbelief as the finishing touches were put in place. She stormed across the street, her blood boiling. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, gesturing angrily at the imposing structure. Jocelyn turned to her, an infuriatingly smug expression on her face. "Why, this is a privacy fence, Valerie. Surely you're familiar with the concept." Valerie's eyes narrowed. "I know what it is, you pretentious harpy. What I want to know is why you felt the need to build it." Jocelyn shrugged, her tone dripping with feigned innocence. "Well, I simply felt that a little more privacy would be beneficial for the neighborhood. You know how noisy and unsightly mobile homes can be. I thought this would help preserve the tranquility and property values of the area." Valerie's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "So let me get this straight. You built this monstrosity just to spite me." Jocelyn tesked and shook her head. "Spite? Oh no, my dear. I'm merely exercising my rights as a homeowner in this community. If you have a problem with it, I'm sure the HOA board would be more than happy to discuss it with you." With that, she turned and strode back to her house, leaving Valerie seething with rage. Valerie knew that Jocelyn had found the perfect way to get under her skin, and she was determined to retaliate. As she stormed back to her own property, Valerie's mind was racing, searching for the perfect way to strike back at her insufferable neighbor. Jocelyn may have won this round, but Valerie was far from done. The war was just beginning. Over the next few weeks, the tension between Valerie and Jocelyn reached a fever pitch. Valerie had tried every trick in the book to get under Jocelyn's skin, from blasting her music even louder to accidentally letting her dog dig up Jocelyn's carefully manicured flower beds. But Jocelyn remained unfazed, responding to each provocation with an infuriating calm. She would simply call the HOA board, who would in turn levy fines and issue warnings to Valerie. The more Valerie escalated her antics, the more Jocelyn seemed to enjoy the upper hand. Finally, Valerie decided it was time to take drastic measures. She knew that Jocelyn took great pride in her prized rose garden, which was the envy of the entire neighborhood. It was the one thing Jocelyn always bragged about, constantly inviting people over to admire her masterpiece. One night, under the cover of darkness, Valerie crept through Jocelyn's backyard, a pair of shears in hand. With a sickening feeling of satisfaction, she began to methodically snip away at the delicate blooms, one by one. The next morning, Jocelyn stepped outside, humming contentedly as she made her way towards her prized garden. But the moment she laid eyes on the carnage, her face twisted in horror. "No, my roses," she shrieked, dropping to her knees. She frantically began inspecting the damaged plants, her fingers trembling. Valerie, watching from behind the safety of her own fence, couldn't help but feel a twinge of triumph. She knew Jocelyn would be devastated, and that was exactly what she wanted. A few hours later, Jocelyn was on Valerie's doorstep, her eyes wild with rage. "You did this, didn't you?" she accused, her voice shaking. Valerie feigned innocence. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Jocelyn." "Don't play dumb with me," Jocelyn spat. "Someone destroyed my rose garden, and I know it was you." Valerie shrugged nonchalantly. "Well, that's certainly unfortunate. But I can assure you I had nothing to do with it." Jocelyn's nostrils flared. "You're lying. I know it was you, hooligan." Valerie's lips curled into a smug smile. My, Jocelyn. Such harsh words. And here I thought we were neighbors." Jocelyn's face flushed with anger. "Neighbors? You're no neighbor of mine. You. She struggled to find the words, her rage rendering her speechless. Valerie's smile widened. "Well, if you're quite finished with your little tantrum, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave me be. I have important things to attend to." With that, she turned and retreated back into her mobile home, leaving a seething Jocelyn standing on the doorstep. As the days passed, Jocelyn's mood only grew darker. She spent countless hours trying to revive her beloved rose garden, but the damage was too severe. She knew, deep down, that Valerie was responsible, and the humiliation of it all was almost more than she could bear. And Valerie, for her part, was relishing every moment of her victory. She had struck a blow against the insufferable HOA president, and she had no intention of letting up any time soon. The war was far from over. As the weeks turned into months, the feud between Valerie and Jocelyn only intensified. Jocelyn became increasingly obsessed with finding a way to get back at her infuriating neighbor, while Valerie reveled in her ability to push Jocelyn's buttons. One day, Jocelyn arrived home to find a large, elaborately decorated banner hanging from the front of Valerie's mobile home. It read, in bold letters, Congratulations, JOCELYN, Best HOA for idontworkhere. Jocelyn's jaw dropped, her face flushing with anger. She stomped over to Valerie's door and began pounding on it relentlessly. When Valerie finally answered, she couldn't contain her glee. "Why, Jocelyn, what a pleasant surprise. I was just celebrating your outstanding leadership of our wonderful HOA." Jocelyn's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You think this is funny, don't you?" she hissed. Valerie feigned innocence. "Why, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm simply expressing my sincere admiration for your tireless efforts to keep this community in tip-top shape." Jocelyn's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You're mocking me. You? Me? Mock you?" Valerie gasped in mock horror. "Heavens, no. I would never dream of such a thing." She paused, a sly grin spreading across her face. "Unless, of course, you've done something to deserve it." Jocelyn let out a frustrated growl. "That's it, Valerie. I've had enough of your childish games. I'm going to the HOA board, and I'm going to make sure you're thrown out of this community for good." Valerie's expression darkened. Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you, Jocelyn. You see, I have a few tricks up my sleeve. Jocelyn paused, her brow furrowing. What are you talking about? Valerie's smile widened. Let's just say that I've been doing a little digging into the HOO's financial records, and let's just say that I've uncovered some interesting discrepancies. Jocelyn's eyes widened in horror. You wouldn't dare. Oh, but I would, Valerie replied, her voice dripping with menace. Unless, of course, you agree to leave me and my lovely mobile home alone. Jocelyn opened her mouth to protest, but Valerie cut her off. And don't even think about trying to retaliate. I have plenty of evidence to take to the authorities, and I'm not afraid to use it. Jocelyn stood there, her mind racing. She knew that Valerie was serious, and the thought of being exposed as a thief or embezzler was more than she could bear. Her reputation, her standing in the community, it would all be ruined. Finally, with a defeated sigh, she nodded. Fine. You win, Valerie. I'll leave you alone. Valerie's smile widened. Wise decision, Jocelyn. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some celebrating to do. As Jocelyn turned and walked away, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Valerie couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. She had finally found a way to put the insufferable HOA president in her place. But deep down, Valerie knew that the war was far from over. Jocelyn was not the type to simply give up and walk away. She would be back, and Valerie would have to be ready. In the weeks that followed, Jocelyn was uncharacteristically quiet. She no longer confronted Valerie or made any attempts to punish her for her disruptive behavior. Instead, she seemed to withdraw into herself, spending more and more time in her own home. Valerie, on the other hand, was reveling in her newfound freedom. She continued to push the boundaries of the HOA's rules, blasting her music at all hours and allowing her dog to run amok. But Jocelyn remained silent, much to Valerie's delight. However, Valerie's triumph was short-lived. One day, as she was tending to her lawn, she noticed a large, official-looking envelope sitting on her doorstep. Her heart sank as she recognized the HOA's insignia on the envelope. Steeling herself, Valerie opened the envelope and began to read. Inside, she found a formal notice of eviction, citing numerous violations of the community's covenants and bylaws. The notice was signed by the entire HOA board, including Jocelyn. Valerie's hands trembled with rage as she read the document. She had thought she had Jocelyn cornered, but it seemed the HOA president had been playing a much longer game. Determined to confront her nemesis, Valerie marched over to Jocelyn's house and began pounding on the door. After a moment, the door swung open, revealing a smug-looking Jocelyn. You! Valerie spat, thrusting the eviction notice in Jocelyn's face. What is the meaning of this? Jocelyn's lips curled into a cruel smile. Why, Valerie, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm simply upholding the standards and covenants of this community as I'm required to do as the HOA president. Valerie's eyes narrowed. Don't give me that bullshit, Jocelyn. I know you're behind this. Jocelyn shrugged nonchalantly. If the evidence points to you violating the rules, then I have no choice but to take action. It's nothing personal, dear. It's just business. Valerie's nostrils flared in anger. Business. You're destroying my life. You. Jocelyn raised a hand, silencing her. Now, Valerie. Let's not make this any more unpleasant than it has to be. You have 30 days to vacate the premises or will be forced to take legal action. With that, she began to close the door, but Valerie wedged her foot in the opening, refusing to let her escape. This isn't over, Jocelyn, Valerie growled. I won't go down without a fight. Jocelyn's eyes narrowed. I wouldn't expect anything less from you, Valerie. But I assure you, this time, the law is on my side. Valerie opened her mouth to respond, but Jocelyn cut her off. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some important HOA business to attend to." With that, she slammed the door in Valerie's face, leaving her standing there, seething with rage and desperation. Valerie knew that she had to act quickly if she wanted to save her home and her way of life. She had to find a way to turn the tables on Jocelyn once and for all. But as she stood there, staring at the imposing fence that Jocelyn had erected, Valerie couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. This time, the odds were stacked against her. Valerie spent the next few days in a state of frantic desperation, searching for any possible way to overturn the HOA's decision to evict her. She combed through the community's bylaws, looking for loopholes or technicalities that she could exploit. She even reached out to local news outlets, hoping to generate some public sympathy for her plight. But no matter what she tried, Jocelyn and the HOA board remained steadfast in their determination to remove her from the community. Valerie's pleas and protests fell on deaf ears, and the date of her eviction loomed ever closer. As the final day approached, Valerie knew that she was running out of options. She had poured her life savings into this mobile home, and the thought of losing it was almost more than she could bear. She had to find a way to win, no matter the cost. And then a glimmer of hope emerged. Valerie remembered the discrepancies she had uncovered in the HOA's financial records, the information she had used to blackmail Jocelyn into leaving her alone. Perhaps there was a way to turn the tables once again. Valerie spent the next few days meticulously combing through the documents, piecing together a damning case against Jocelyn and the HOA board. She collected evidence of misappropriated funds, lavish expenditures, and suspicious accounting practices. It was a complex web of corruption, and Valerie was determined to unravel it. As the eviction date drew near, Valerie made her move. She gathered all of her evidence and marched straight to the local district attorney's office, demanding an investigation into the HOA's financial practices. The DA, intrigued by Valerie's claims, agreed to look into the matter. Within a matter of days, a team of investigators had descended upon the community, scouring the HOA's records and interviewing residents. Jocelyn, meanwhile, was in a state of panic. She knew that if the authorities uncovered the truth about the HOA's financial misdeeds, her position and reputation would be ruined. She tried desperately to stall the investigation, but Valerie was one step ahead of her. As the final eviction deadline approached, Valerie stood on her doorstep, a triumphant smile on her face. Jocelyn, on the other hand, was a nervous wreck, constantly looking over her shoulder for the police. And then, just as the clock struck midnight, a convoy of police vehicles descended upon the community. Jocelyn and several other HOA board members were arrested on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and abuse of power. Valerie watched the spectacle unfold with a sense of vindication. She had won, against all odds. Jocelyn's carefully crafted kingdom had crumbled around her, and Valerie had emerged victorious. As the dust settled, Valerie was reinstated as a resident of the community, her mobile home fully restored to its former glory. Jocelyn and the other corrupt board members were facing lengthy prison sentences, and the HOA was under new management. Valerie couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction as she looked out over the neighborhood, her eyes lingering on the now empty lot where Jocelyn's house once stood. She had proven that she was no pushover, and that even the most powerful and entitled could be brought down. In the end, Valerie's persistence and resilience had paid off. She had refused to back down, and she had emerged victorious. It was a lesson that Jocelyn and the rest of the community would never forget.